So we're live. We're good with timing. We have Ellen in the witness chair, which is a precious resource this week. Thank you. And we are very, so slowly, just trying to update sections where we seem to have come to a new understanding, not areas where we have more witnesses or where we still don't have agreement. And we still have some more discussion to have on some of the sections. Ellen, did you want to introduce yourself and start with any current edits, or have us continue to just sort of walk through and talk about where we are? It's really cute.
I think we're gonna start where we left off, maybe.
Great, okay, yeah.
So Ellen Tchaikovsky, Office of Legislative Counsel. I'm looking at draft 6.1, which is dated 1/27. This is the language we were looking at last week when I was here. So last week when I was here, we started working on section 2, which starts at the bottom of page 2. So we were going sort of in order of the sections, then we started jumping around. So
Yeah.
So last that I remember we first were talking about duplexes and accessory dwelling units as an allowed use. And then that led us to have a discussion about ADUs, which are on the next page. So I did want to flag that we did jump to ADUs, and I wanted to make sure if you want to talk about the language that's on line 20, we could do that as well, or if you wanted to go back to ADUs. So on line 20 is the language that in any district served by municipal water and sewer, multi-unit dwellings of 4 or fewer units shall be an allowed use. I don't think we've talked about that one yet.
And this also goes to our side-by-side, which is really useful if we look at what is the one you did,
Yes.
for 6.1, where you have all residential districts on one side. I found this very helpful.
Yes.
Versus districts served by municipal water and sewer, because different things are allowable in this bill under different constructs.
So I'll say where I think we are with this section, which is thorny. We've heard from planners that, they want to talk more about this. My understanding is Catherine Dimitrick is going to work on language and workshop that with us this week, because that's kind of what we asked her to do. I think from my recollection, she had the most vision of what she thought could be changed to give some flexibility for areas that were critical ecological areas or lines to industrial parks where the community didn't intend to develop all along that corridor.
Right.
Senator Harrison.
So you're talking specifically about what we mean by districts served by municipal and water.
Yes.
Yes.
Sewer and water.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's critical. That should be its own element.
That's its own
That
discussion.
definition should
Yes.
actually probably even have its own paragraph.
Right,
It shouldn't
right.
be. Okay.
I mean, we leave it to Ledge Council where that paragraph goes or but yes, it needs to be further defined.
Right. And I think a fundamental question is going to be who defines it. Is it going to be the municipality who defines it? Is it the state who defines it? Is it defined by some formula? That's really important, is who defines it and then how it's defined, I think.
I think if we're interested in supporting smart growth, we have to define it.
The state, you mean?
We should define what areas we are thinking that have water and sewer are appropriate for density development.
Okay.
And we can take feedback on that. So,
Sure,
but
yeah.
it should be standard. I agree with Senator Clarkson. Let's standardize it so a community can't say we've now determined that these are off limits as water and sewer.
Right. So we'll define it from using criteria. At some point, there's going to be a capacity issue
Mhm.
on either one or both of the services, and they could be provided by different entities. So it's just going to get complicated.
Yeah, but that exists anyway. I
It's
mean,
already
there's-
complicated.
I don't know that we have it in statute, but if a system can't take any more capacity, it can't take any more capacity. Is that?
Well,
we need to-
there's reservations. Like if you have a certain amount, say you have 10 units left, do you want to, and a preferable housing program project is coming along and it's
Oh,
gonna
I
need
see.
5 of those.
Yeah.
Do you let those go to others that might not be as important to meeting the goal in
That's
the
a-
meantime? So it just, I'm
That,
I'm
that
just trying
helps
to
me,
set
yeah,
this
get an
stage.
example of what we, so we could, if you, I don't know if you want something to do, but you know, I've asked Catherine to also reach out to you or like, you know, so
Sure.
I just wanted to make sure everyone had that update, but anyone who wants to work with Catherine for a proposal, that the committee can workshop further.
And I'll just say that this language did come out of the Vanguard stakeholder process. And so they had a very specific intent when they were working on this, and I was drafting to match their intent. And so as you all have this conversation, thinking about if this language still reflects your intent is important. And so I think I'll also add that the language is vague and it's not currently a concept that's in chapter 117, this phrase municipal water and sewer service. That hasn't been used before in this area. And so also I went with the verb served in an effort to try to avoid the words connected.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
specifically, there was an interest, I think, in that stakeholder group to make sure that if a municipality was opposed to this, they couldn't make defensive decisions with their allocations. And so currently it does say that is served by municipal water and sewer. The area is served. So it is sort of allowing flexibility, just as this is sort of a proxy for if the area has municipal water and sewer, regardless of whether a municipal water and sewer connection permit has been issued, this is the area we have allotted for density. So if there isn't any capacity and they could still do, private septic or some kind of community alternative based wastewater, the density is still allowed. So that is where this drafting came from. And so if you have different intent, we can definitely work on that language.
Senator Parks.
So capacity is an interesting challenge because we're having quite a bit of development in infill and some great stuff going on in Woodstock. And we're bumping into capacity not on sewer so much as on water. And municipal water and sewer, I assume means even if it's a private company that provides the water, it's still municipal water. It serves a municipality.
So it's not defined, so it's not clear.
So that's part one of my question is we need to make sure this includes the few water systems that are private that service municipalities. We're hoping this won't be forever and that it will actually become a municipal water system fairly soon. Because the second part of my question on this is we have a massive amount of infrastructure money coming to enable towns on these two issues, on these two areas. And how can when we hit the capacity issue here, is it possible for us to identify that quickly and focus federal support on those communities that we're relying on for density, but that need further capacity building? Is that another area that we could be addressing here where we could funnel more support and resources and effort to help them
We can,
update enough so that they can fulfill the capacity that we're relying on them for? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, but I don't know if I'm the one to answer that question.
yes, right.
Right, so potentially, I mean, I think that the ARPA money that was going towards that issue is already
The
in
infrastructure
process. Yeah, that's already sort of in process, so I don't know if you could do anything
Oh,
really. to
towns
that.
are still identifying what they want to do. And Katie is just letting all these towns know what's available.
Who's Katie?
Katie Buckley, who the
Oh, okay.
VLCT has hired
Okay.
to be the go-between between all the towns and the federal money. And she is now helping towns navigate. She now has a few staff members. And this feeds into our rural index, the underserved communities also, because she's done a great job evidently educating all the towns about what's out there. And now they need help accessing it and making these projects happen.
And is there a legislative nexus? That's,
Here.
there is no other legislative nexus right now for,
Well, there is
These-
with the underserved communities and the BAA
Okay.
with our index. So there's a
Okay.
nexus there and there's a nexus possibly here.
okay, so ultimately the nexus might be the budget.
It might be, yes, but
We could, okay.
I guess I'm just
Yeah.
trying to
No, I want to
respond to you and
Yeah.
your capacity concern.
Totally, and I want to just float an idea. A&R is the one who decides who gets the funding for
Okay.
the water and sewer, and they must have criteria. So I don't know if it's in
That's
our
maybe worth having them.
bailiwick to, well, we can at least talk to them and talk to the administration
Mhm.
about if being a, whatever, we might want a name for these areas. Like being a name, being one of these areas.
Wet and
I know,
wild.
but that's what we need is another area.
Wet and wild.
Well, no, but I'm just thinking, like, if A&R is choosing between two different
Yeah,
municipalities, especially ones who need rehab.
Yeah.
Because a lot of their work is going to go into fixing up, but modernizing utilities that are in systems that are not as,
mhm.
old, they need help. So if we could put a plug in that process, or at least talk to them about it and see if housing could be one of their criteria.
Senator
that
Cummings
they-
said.
I
Yes.
think it might be helpful to talk to A&R and find out what values or criteria they're using. They were the ones that limited the size of Montpelier's water filtration plant, so we can't provide the town of Berlin from which we are taking the water. And we knew their water well was contaminated, but we might grow too much. I had the experience of having one division in A&R say, if you have to do this, and another division saying, if you do, we won't fund you.
Mhm.
That is where there's some bottlenecks, and I mean, I had to drive 3 miles to get to the hearing. But if you're up in the kingdom and you've got to drive 60, 70 miles to confront this, I mean,
Mhm.
that could be a critical bottleneck.
So another precious resource besides Ellen is time and committee in general. We have a pretty full schedule this week. Scott, do we have like a couple more half-hour slots that we take away from our time together? So next week, after we hear from the environmental court, I'm hoping we are mostly just talking to each other and having some witnesses and ledge counsel lining the room to help answer questions. So I guess my question is, do we want to take some of our own time this week and hand it to A&R, or do people feel like they could have this conversation with A&R and return with the report back?
If A&R could tell us how they make these decisions and tell us how they would, because there are quite a few systems already in the queue in
Mhm.
A&R. So then we would know which systems are going to be updated. And I don't know that there is a huge amount of money after that.
There's a ton of infrastructure money after that.
Yeah, but most of that requires matching funds.
So maybe a good productive way to do this is to have maybe Ellen and Wendy and me, anybody who's interested, and try and see if we can have set up a meeting with, who's the head of water at A&R?
I don't know.
We can get.
Michael now.
Mike, yeah, we can talk to Mike.
And we can figure that out and try and
Sure,
bring that
if you
back.
hit a
I'd be
roadblock
happy
this
to do
week
that.
and they're not communicating well enough, or you don't have the answers you need and you feel like you need them in the witness chair, we can make that decision about next week. But we'll all have to make those decisions, like, is this a conversation we could try to have and get back to the committee versus if that becomes unproductive this week, we can then schedule it for next week.
Yeah, I think the challenge we face is it's unproductive if we put a huge amount of expectation onto our downtown and village centers that are served.
Right.
And they're all running out of capacity. I mean, so
Yeah.
that's sort of self-defeating.
One place I thought you were going that's on my mind is, anywhere that we've invested state and federal dollars or plan to invest state and federal dollars into these systems, we should be able to achieve greater density because that's what we were investing in. If a town pays for it all by themselves or, then, or a community does, then maybe that does give them the control over it. I don't know if that's even possible to delineate.
I think that's all the time. I mean, we delineate it with ADUs. If you get
Right.
money
Yeah.
from the state, you need to make this a long-term
Mhm.
rental.
This is a public good.
This is a public good. The same is true for all our state dollars. They're public goods.
Right.
And I think we can require all sorts of things when we have public goods, enabling public goods.
The only thing I would add back to a few points ago is that I don't know much about ANR's process. I do know that the designated areas each receive priority as part of specifically wastewater infrastructure. It's delineated in statute already that the designated areas already do. I think there are some other things so that's bonus points in the application system. So that is already there. So yes, that is something that is already taken into account.
Okay.
There are lots of other criteria as well that I don't know about, but
I'm just going to email Julie right now and find out who the person is they need to meet with.
Yay.
And then we don't meet with you, we meet with Mike and this person.
yeah, I'll give Mike a heads up.
That gets a
I think
third
perhaps
ledge
Mike could
count.
Probably answer some questions.
We won't
Quick,
have
more
as much
quickly.
of Ellen outside of committee, just for until we're ready to draft something, just because she has to be in natural resources. So,
I mean, we have to share her.
yes, well, two of the highest priorities in the Senate, apparently have to share Ellen as the foremost drafter. So this is not a fun week for Ellen, I don't think. On my, you may have something else. I wanted to make sure I understood. And we are right now, I'll say for the committee, we're working on this 2-dwelling as a ADU and, duplex, 2-dwelling. And I've been actually looking at the AARP
Yes, that's very
thing
useful.
because it has a lot of pictures of what's a duplex, what's a stacked duplex, what's a side-by-side duplex. They don't call them split levels.
No, you're right. These pictures are
Yeah.
great.
So that's just been helpful as we try to define these. And so we'll continue to work on that outside of committee. The next thing that I had on my list was if it's possible I want maybe the whole committee to hear if there's a challenge with the owner occupation piece for ADUs, if we can time limit them or limit them to the transfer of the deed as an encumbrance. And I think, if I'm remembering correctly, you had some thoughts on whether or not that was possible.
Sure. So
I just want to say, we've already put in statute, it is required now that they be owner occupied. So that was a decision we made
Yes.
in the last 2 years in this committee. So
No, well,
Just saying.
we had talked about the possibility that it could end as an encumbrance
exactly.
when, after some period of time, like 10 years or,
So
Yeah.
all I was meaning is
Yeah,
that we've
that's-
already encumbered it
yeah.
by requiring this.
I think we want to thoroughly understand the implications of that
Yes.
in terms of A, the ability to gain it, B, the encumbrance on the property, which is possible discouragement of people from entering into the program because of it. There are a whole bunch of things that I don't know that we thought through entirely yet.
Right, but to go back to public money, this only follows the public
I
money.
understand.
So if they go ahead and build an ADU, they can do whatever they want with it. I mean, so remember, this is just with the public money.
So we have a real estate lawyer coming in, but I thought, we'd hear your thoughts before we hear from a real estate lawyer.
Sure. So first, what's in statute is the floor for ADUs in that it sets the minimum. So towns are allowed to be less restrictive with ADUs, and so I don't have a clear answer for you other than that it will depend on the town. And so there are towns that follow the definition and statute exactly and have adopted it fully in their bylaws. And so what that would mean in those towns is that if someone with an ADU on their single family home sold the property to someone else who was not intending to occupy that, they may end up in violation and may need a permit from the town. However, there are other towns that have less restrictions and would simply consider that a 2-unit dwelling. And so there wouldn't be an issue if the owner wasn't occupying it. And so what you have to consider is if you want there to be a sort of state floor that dictates this transition period. And I think we can come up with language, either using like a sunset date or potentially, I would need a little bit more information. I think we can probably draft your intent. It will potentially get, the more restrictions you place on it, the more complicated it'll get, and someone will need to, depending on if the town is following this exactly, we need to like really monitor that. I think we can come up with language, but I will need you to be sort of specific on what the metric is you're using.
Just so I can clarify, and then I'll get to you too. Right now, we require owner occupation for the purposes of the money we give around the program.
Right, anybody else can just
The
build.
towns could depart from owner occupation currently, many have chosen not to.
Yes.
Because if you do it on your own, you can do whatever, I suppose. whatever.
Yeah, I mean, we're out doing a major push for ADUs. What do we want to accomplish? Because ADUs are, right now, your Airbnb. I turn my back room in, I put a little bathroom and a microwave in there, and I rent it out overnight.
Which is a little bit of income for the homeowner.
For the
Yeah,
homeowner, or a lot, but if,
That's,
yeah, I mean, are
Yeah.
we trying to increase the rental stock?
I mean, I think so.
Then that's.
Yeah, I mean, the question too is that a room in your house that you're renting versus someone who invests in partitioning off a part of their home or making a
Right.
large investment, who wants to know what happens to this if I give this to my kids, if nobody wants to live here after me,
Right.
that's.
Or if I'm
because-
putting a mini house in my
Right,
backyard.
right.
If it's a rental unit, I
Yeah.
think real estate law deals with that. The lease goes with the property. If there's no lease, you can be gone. If it's all in what we're looking at this as being, if we're really looking at increasing rental stock, but trying to get around some of the requirements for rental stock, like fire safety, or, I mean, I could turn my entire basement into an accessory dwelling unit. And I have a very nice finished room in my attic with skylights and a window. None of the windows meet fire code.
Right.
So I could not rent it.
Yeah.
And I cannot call it a bedroom.
But you could probably do it as an Airbnb.
That is a concern for me, and I have
Yeah.
seen more than one Airbnb with the little, yeah, my son had the basement because he wanted to get away from his
So
sisters.
it sounds like, let's
not
wait for the
legal.
real estate lawyer, Ellen, I don't wanna
Yeah,
limit you, but we do have a real estate lawyer who's gonna come in and maybe we can really.
but the real
run through
question
that.
is, what are
Red
we trying
Yeah.
to do?
Yeah.
Are we trying to move and enable people to have Airbnbs in their house? Or are we trying to increase rental stock? And then, but allow people to rent in with lesser requirements than they would need if they were developing an apartment. I'm not sure we want to do that.
Senator Clarkson.
So our intent as we developed this was as a public good, and that a public good should follow state investment. And that's why we made it a requirement that it be owner occupied and a long-term rental,
Okay,
not for short-term rental. That is
Okay.
not a public good. I mean, it's fine if individuals want to do that, that's great, but it isn't
okay, then you're talking
answering
about
our housing
adding a
crisis.
rental unit to my house.
Well, that's what
So
ADUs are
I'm
now.
turning my house into essentially a duplex. And it should.
No, because it's subordinate. It is not equal, or,
That's.
I know, but it's actually an important
Wordsmithing.
distinction.
Well, and I think, I don't know, I don't want to put words in Senator Brock's mouth, but what I know I'm concerned about that I thought I heard from him is we want to allow people to age in place and have an owner occupied opportunity to earn income. But some people are reluctant to do it because it's really unclear what it means for you after the useful life evidence for you. You're going to a nursing home, you're leaving your house.
Spouses pass
What
away,
happens
whatever.
then, you know, so is something that you invested in so you could age in place now becoming a challenge for you when you try to sell it, because the person would potentially have to live there and then figure out what to do with this other section, you know? Yeah.
So my thought, anyway, I think that adds value, as we've heard from many people, that it helps when they buy a house with a rentable unit, that helps them pay for the house. It helps missing middle people who can't afford a house without an income stream. So for many people, that's a very attractive option. But what I was thinking of in terms of this thought is that we could maybe parallel the ownership with priority housing. We already have in statute 15 years. You know, the state investment and what developers get out of that is 15 years of affordable housing. Maybe we could tie 15 years to this public good investment of building more housing, because they were meant to be rental units.
Well,
And
let me just suggest something here, and I don't know that I agree with it, but I'm going to suggest it anyway. And that is, if you're talking about public funding, if you want to do something other than have the restrictions that we associate with public funding, once this property is sold or circumstances change, pay the public money back. And then
well,
you can
there's
do
that.
what you want with it.
Interesting.
With
That
interest.
puts a lien-
I like that one.
That
with
would put a
interest,
lien
yeah.
on it. Have to be a secondary lien, or Chris Delia will
Yeah.
be through that door.
Correct.
But
So
yeah.
that is a possibility. I think that's,
I mean, that's,
anyway, so we have some options.
I think, yeah, let's talk to the lawyer.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Yeah,
but
I know.
again, it's
I don't
an
think
option
about
on
that
the
too.
table.
Well, we have it in other places in
No, I
statute.
know.
I mean, we have something similar in
It
other
might
places.
dampen the enthusiasm for the program just because there's so many unknowns, you know.
I don't know, if you, all you have to do is rent it. I mean, it's not a big burden. I mean, love to have rental income in our house.
Um,
That'd be great.
Well, the
Is
rent
an
covered the
albatross.
cost of my heat pumps.
Right.
Yes,
The,
we haven't done that
the
yet.
only other thing I wanted
I
to
had an interesting talk with my electrician.
make sure of in this section is, I know Senator Brock had raised the issue of the height of a ladder for a fire truck, like, is that all taken care of within reason around fire safety that's written here? So like, we've talked about potential density bonuses that can increase the number of floors.
Okay.
We also heard, interestingly, you know, for some towns, the density bonus around floors isn't helpful because you go from wood to steel, which I'm gonna think about more, but the floor bonus, it says provided that the structure complies with the Vermont Fire and Building Safety Code. The Vermont Fire and Building Safety Code, does that capture a town that just doesn't have the fire capacity to deal with a larger story building than that?
I don't think so, but I'm not an expert.
Okay, so we'll
on
have to
that.
talk to Mike.
I think that's
Yeah.
another question for Mike.
Okay.
But
Is-
But in all honesty, I mean, cities deal with this, I mean, with 50 stories. So I mean, fire and safety deals with many stories.
It costs $3 million to buy a ladder truck.
We've talked to smaller towns that have said.
This is why mutual aid exists.
But if you, I mean,
We had 3 towns that bought ladder trucks and they're within a 10-mile radius of each other.
Well, then they're good for mutual aid.
Well, yeah.
But I do think the inclusion of building and fire safety, if hypothetically this is gonna be a 4-story, I don't wanna say this, but I think if you heard from Division of Fire and Safety, they could tell you, I think at 4 stories is when full sprinkling needs to kick in.
Oh, that's
So, but I don't know that specifically, so I do think there was interest in if we included that, it could capture the need for sprinklers. That would potentially offset some of that, but I am not an expert on building the fire code because it is very complicated.
There is also, once you go to a 3rd story with a rental unit, there's extensive fire codes that kick in that make it
Yeah.
very expensive. You have to build an outside stairwell for second exit. I'm not sure what they are now.
okay, so it's a good
Yeah.
mic question then. I thought before we lose you, we could, I still have a question in section 3. I don't know if others do too, but we've made it
So
to
have we
section 3.
moved on from section 2? I mean, that was,
We have some work to do around the 2-unit dwelling definition. Catherine Dimitrick is gonna help us with municipal water and service, and we're gonna work on that with A&R. I'm ready to include some of Chip Sawyer's suggestions around using words like density instead of dimensional.
yes. I
So
agree.
I thought his were pretty specific and valuable. We're looking at the ADU owner occupation issue with a real estate lawyer and in sort of our own brains. And we're gonna get Mike in on the fire safety issue.
Who does real estate law for us here in Lunch Council? David, doesn't he?
No, well, it's actually Eric Fitzpatrick, but it depends. He does property and deeds. David does some aspects of real estate and I also do some aspects of real estate.
So
So who would,
well, we have a witness.
well, but it's an outside witness. We have our own counsel on this, so who would be?
What are
who's-
you interested in specifically
What
about
we're
it?
talking about here.
Well, the realtor sent us Fred P. And I think someone in the practicing right now would be
Sure.
helpful. I'm not.
Yeah, no,
consulting
it's-
our legal
yeah,
counsel. Like, I
yes.
think we should, just have a real estate lawyer who's right now out in the field while people are creating ADUs to talk to us.
Can I add one other thing to that issue?
Yes.
So all of these sections, most of these sections were drafted largely in isolation of each other. So
Mhm.
there's a layering effect here. So
Mhm.
when you're thinking about the owner occupied aspect, you'll remember on page 2 or the duplexes, if the prior language on page 2 regarding duplexes as an allowed use, that, if that is also passed, if both things are passed together, that will eliminate some of a town's ability to
Require owner occupation.
require owner occupation.
Right. I know that Senator Clarkson has always felt like ADUs are different than duplexes, which are designed for 2 separate living. I don't want to put words in your mouth. So I'm trying to honor this idea that ADUs, we keep owner
I
occupation.
think they should be separate,
Okay.
partly because of the subordinate issue and for bunches of reasons. But duplex, the language piece on duplexes versus 2 units, their duplexes are used all the way through statute, right? Or not? I thought I understood that they were already something that was discussed in statute. So if we come up with another term, there's some value. I understood from Catherine that there was value in using consistent language.
So not really.
Not really which.
So currently, I can go back and check, but chapter 117 is not nearly as specific as most of this bill is. And so I don't think it appears much. Both multi-unit and multifamily dwelling, that phrase appears repeatedly, and it is unclear if that refers to 2 units or 3 units. So that appears,
Got it.
yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that is generally all the time we have on this.
Okay, just one
Senator
other
Cummings, yeah.
if we're gonna allow duplexes, and then the duplexes can have accessory dwellings,
I think we're moving to take that out,
okay,
just to help.
that's, yeah.
I think that,
I just don't wanna
yeah,
create the slums of York by just pressing people into very tight, small.
I call it like a Rube Goldberg solution. So if we're doing quadruplexes and we're regulating those differently, I don't want to do your duplex now can have an ADU.
Yes. Yeah,
I think we
Glad
all
you said
agree.
that, because
Yeah.
I was going to ask, do you allow accessory dwelling units to have accessory dwelling?
Right, exactly.
Right,
It's
that's
starting
the
to
next
feel a
That's
little,
where we're going.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think
I'm
there's
just gonna bump
agreement.
out the porch.
I'll just name now when we get to section 3, what I heard from our human services folks was one of the bigger issues they're having is the regulation of the location of emergency shelters far from foot traffic, far from transit in downtown areas in some places. The bill as it's currently written still allows a community to regulate the location. So I'm just still questioning that in my mind, because that's the problem, one of the problems you're trying to solve. If they can't regulate hours and seasonality now, but if they can regulate location, that still, I think, presents a challenge to a lot of the problems we heard exist for emergency shelters.
Yeah, that's a slightly thorny one, isn't it? I mean, because the community needs to be involved in locating it. On the other hand, we want to reduce NIMBYism as much as possible. So,
And we want to make them co-located with services and
Yeah, I mean.
yes, they need to be.
transportation.
If you put a shelter downtown where, depending on the town, you will have access to food and
Right,
other things, transportation, depending on the size. If you say there can be no regulation, I would be upset if a homeless shelter moved in next door to me. Because not all people that are in homeless shelters are safe. And, to have a sex offender living in your neighborhood is a real detriment for the neighbors. And you have to be notified. I don't know who's in the homeless.
right.
shelter,
And I
so
hear all of this. I just,
Yeah, I think
we don't want to locate them out of usefulness
No.
to the people who need them. So I'm just thinking about that. as
but
we
I think
look
if
No,
at
I think
somebody
section 3.
donates a house.
Yeah,
I think it's something we.
yeah. So I might talk
I
to
agree.
Sarah Phillip outside of committee. I just,
Yeah.
in case anybody wants to ponder that with me, that's pretty.
Yeah, I mean,
Very
we
well.
need to protect public safety.
Yeah, right.
And I've got an essential homeless shelter in my neighborhood.
Right.
Uh,
And if people sort of congregate without a shelter, so there's I think we have to sort of address the root issue and make sure we're not pushing them so far to the outskirts that it's like saying they're not here.
Right, well, yeah, we'll put them all up at the airport
Right.
where unless you pay for a private jet, you can't go anywhere.
Thanks so much, Ellen.
I'll be back in a little while.
Oh, yay. I'm so excited. Thank you you're just gonna run back and forth down the hall. Is Becky here in person? Oh, Becky's on Zoom. Thanks so much, Becky, for your patience. We're trying to write the bill as we keep talking to folks. We have heard great things about what UVM Medical is trying to do to, meet your employment needs and help house our medical professionals. So thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. So this is my first time in such a meeting. So please guide me and ask questions along the way. So for the record,
Jason coached you, it sounds like, so you're already a pro.
He did coach me a little bit. So he did coach me to kick off this way by saying, for the record, my name is Rebecca Capsalis. You can call me Becky. I am the Associate Vice President for Talent Acquisition for the UVM Health Network. I've also been an HR professional in the state, and with some very specific focus on recruiting since the year 2000. So while I do have the past 10 years under my belt with the UVM Medical Center and the UVM Health Network, my career actually started in recruiting and staffing at Country Home Products in Vergennes, Vermont. And I've also worked leading human resources for the Howard Center and Magic Hat. And so I say that only to say that I have a lot of experience recruiting and relocating people to the state for work. Again, for the last 12 years, it's really been focused at the UVM Medical Center and the UVM Health Network. As you know, there is a labor crisis nationally and a housing shortage within our state, which is something that I struggle with daily. Any given day of the week in the state of Vermont alone, I've got about 1,600 open positions that I am looking to fill. And I am looking to fill with a very limited labor pool within the state. So with the unemployment rate hovering at around 2%, that's a great economic message, but for anybody trying to fill their roles in the state, it's a huge challenge. You've probably heard the figure that for every job opening in the state, there's about 3 people that potentially, we're trying to tap in every 3.3 job openings there are available for 1 unemployed person rather. So it's a tight labor market. The volume of our open positions has been extremely high, especially since the pandemic. So when I first started 12 years ago, we probably had about half of the open requisitions that we do today. So it's just getting more and more challenging. Top of that, the turnover rate for healthcare positions is extremely high. Thankfully, at the network, ours is a little bit lower than the national average, but we still struggle with retaining and keeping the employees that we have. It's been really hard to attract people to live in the state. So while I am confident that I and my team of people are amazing sales people, and we can do a really good job selling what our state has to offer, oftentimes we get to the point where we're about to make an offer, or we have just made an offer, and folks that are interested in coming to work with us and live in our state have to decline or withdraw their application because they're not able to find housing. I think the last that I knew, the vacancy rate for rentals in the Chittenden County area was around 1%. So that's really tough to try to get people here. The UVM Health Network, as you likely know, has had to become more creative and innovative in some thought solutions on how we might attract people and keep them here. And part of that strategy has been the idea of providing employee housing. And so this spring, we will be opening our first of 2 buildings up to our current employees, and with a focus on actually most of the units we are looking to reserve for those that are relocating or are newly employed with the organization. Additionally, there will be housing subsidy available for those who are below the threshold. And we'll be providing that so that we can provide affordable housing to our folks. I guess my plea, is that we want the state to consider being similarly creative and innovative in ways that we can increase housing to people that are currently in the state, so we can keep them in the state, but also people that we are looking to attract into the state. So new talent, increasing our population and finding secure and affordable housing for them. I thank you all for your work. I thank you for your focus on this. I see some familiar faces. I'm part of the Workforce Development Board, so I know a lot of what I'm saying is not new to folks. And I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Is the housing you're developing basically apartments, or are you doing condos or single family? When, I'm assuming if you're recruiting someone right out of school, an apartment, one bedroom apartment would work. I know we are all trying to recruit psychiatrists and child psychiatrists. I don't think they're gonna move here to live in an apartment. So I want to make sure that we have a breadth of housing available.
So let me answer for you that the investment that the Health Network has made is in apartments. So the first, it's actually located at 303 Market Street in South Burlington. And the apartments range from studio to 3-bedroom. And for this first building, actually, it's meant to be semi-temporary in the sense that people can only live there for up to 2 years. The idea is that it would really help them through the transition of being here and then finally securing, to your point, if they are looking for something larger, a home that they would like to buy, the hope is that there will be more of those homes available for folks to choose from and to be able to move into, or at least it will buy them 2 years to look for such housing.
I have a couple questions there, Senator Harrison.
Just one question right now. How are you financing this housing?
So we are charging rent for those units. So other than that, I don't know the particular, I wasn't at the strategy level in terms of securing the building. All I know is that we are charging rent and that we are providing subsidy to folks who are under a certain threshold.
And how many units?
In the first building, there are 60 units. And the hope, so we are right now in the process of collecting our applications. So the announcement went out at the very end of January, and we have like a 3-week window where we are collecting applications from folks that are new hires as well as existing employees. And depending on the level of interest, I mean, if we have 50 applicants that are new hires that are looking for a place to live, they will have first dibs. We are reserving 10% of the units for current employees. Not newly hired relocating employees.
At some point, if you could have Jason let us know if any were oversubscribed or undersubscribed. We're hearing more about a need for 3-bedroom units for really specific populations, new Americans, just larger families. And we want to make sure they're not squeezed out of, there's only 2 of these that are 3-bedroom. And so that's one thought, just to make sure we know what people want. And how could local and state government be more helpful to you in this process?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is a somewhat temporary solution. These units will only have a maximum occupancy of 24 months. So, one of the things I guess I would ask is that the building and zoning restrictions within the state become more flexible so that there can be more developments within the state to provide secure and permanent housing for people would really be my ask.
So maybe I was part of the deal with building this that it has to be temporary, or it just seemed like the most meaningful solution to the larger problem to create the temporary nature of it.
Right, so the most acute problem for us right now at the UVM Medical Center and the UVM Health Network, especially in Vermont, but it's true in Northern New York, is that we cannot fill our positions with the people that we have in our state, right? And so we need to become more flexible and innovative in our solutions in attracting people to the state. And in doing that, we need to make sure that they have housing. So to answer your question, the why behind the what initially is because we need to attract more talent to our state to fill open roles. And this was a way that we saw that we would be able to do that.
I have one more question, and I think I see a couple others. Last I heard, you had 1,300 open jobs at the UVM Medical. I don't know if it was the whole network or.
That would be true, Kelly, just you, that would just be in Vermont.
Okay, so with 1,300 open jobs and a lot of people unable to find housing, how is that impacting quality of care?
I don't know how to answer that. As you're aware, we have a lot of travelers. So it's not like, our patients don't have care. They do. The way that we're supplementing is by having traveling nurses, for instance, or other clinicians or LNAs, and their bill rates, as you're probably aware, are like 3 times what someone's salary might be. And so it's really impacting us financially. I wouldn't say that our patients are suffering. It's financially, as an organization, we are really suffering.
So it's a staff morale and financial issue is what you're.
I would say it impacts morale. I think that's fair.
Okay. I saw Senator Clarkson and Senator Brock.
Thank you, Becky. Yes, we serve together on the State Workforce Development Board, so it's good to see you in another capacity. I guess what federal and state money are you using for this development? Do you know what the cost is of this 60-unit building? And are you using our downtown tax credits? I mean, what state and federal money are you using to build this?
And Becky, you're allowed to use the lifeline and call on Jason.
Yeah, I see Jason's like, I can help you back here. Yeah, so I will defer.
Senator Jason Williams, I'm the Vice President of Government Community Relations for the UVM Health Network. We are not the ones who are developing these 2 buildings.
Yeah,
that's what I thought.
We partnered with a developer who's building in designated the growth area in South Burlington. So they're the ones.
So there's
who put together.
significant federal and state money invested in this project, is my
There's
guess.
tax credits.
I think that they've leveraged everything they can to make it work. And
Well,
having the guarantee of us, we have the master lease for the 2 buildings. And so us providing a guarantee that there'll be 100% occupancy that we're paying for.
Right, so
Obviously.
tax credits are still us financing it because it just means less money coming in. So question for you is, what's the time frame? When are these going to be available?
So Becky shared that we had the first building coming online.
I know, but I didn't hear when. Oh, in April, okay.
Yep, it's actually May 1st. So May 1st, the first tenants should be able to move in.
And do we know what the total cost of the first of the project is?
I do not know that.
Yeah, because I think one of the things we're also interested in is the impact of the inflation and the timing on materials and, development challenges that we can't control, but that are out there. It would be interesting for us to appreciate and understand how budgets have gone up over the course of the last year and a half.
Snyder Braverman are the developers,
Okay.
so they're pretty expert in the space. And I'm sure they'd be happy.
Are they a Vermont
Yes.
developer?
Senator Brock.
I'm just wondering, there's a 2-year time limit for occupancy. Is there something that gives you confidence that those people can in fact be housed in the market in 2 years?
Our committee.
I am a very
We're working.
optimistic person is the best answer I can give you. I am hopeful. I am optimistic. It felt like, a 2-year time frame of people being able to look, that felt fair. So we're considering the second building that comes online, which will be about a year later, which I think is around 100 units, and we'll have a childcare center as part of it. We are considering not making that a quote unquote short term, if you would consider 24 months to be short term, that we are considering that would be a longer rental.
Senator Harrison, and then we'll give everyone a break.
Sure. So when did you start this process? I'm just curious about how long the development has taken.
I think we started our conversations with Senator Braverman last year. I believe that they had been in the permitting process. They had been a development partner for South Burlington City Center for a while before we started working with them. So I don't know the full duration of their planning.
That's interesting. Well, that would be good to know, I think, just so we know the schedule. So it's pretty quick, actually. So that's great.
Well, it was clearly in the works before you guys entered the conversation.
So, and then the 2-year, I just assumed that's something that is a goal, but you wouldn't kick people out after 2 years.
So it actually, this building really is 2 years, that people cannot extend their lease past that. They might have an opportunity to move into the other building. That, again, the why behind the what really is around getting more people to the state and talent into our state and working in our organization. And for that reason, we do need to have some way of sort of turning those apartments over. Otherwise, we're no longer able to achieve getting housing for people as they're moving here.
Right, and that makes a lot of sense, but is it your own rule?
Yes, it's our own rule. Yep.
Oh, good.
I do want to give everyone a break, Senator Brett.
But my question, again, goes back to that 2-year period and the concern of being able to house those people within. Is there some contingency plan to deal with it in the event that the housing is not available? Because right now it's not. And as I look forward, to say, where's 160 units going to come from in the private market in the Burlington area based on what we know right now? And there is a concern.
Again, it's our own rule. So if after 2 years, we feel like that's something that we need to change, then it would be subject to us revisiting it. I'm sure, we certainly, the point behind it, the initiative really is driven for our need to recruit and relocate people, but it's also to retain our current employees. And so it would not serve in our best interest, if we were to lose all of our employees' housing, because then we would lose them from our organization. So, we will be motivated to keeping our employees housed and, having a roof over their head.
I do want to give at least people a 5-minute break. Jason or Becky, could you get a Snyder Braverman contact to Senator Harrison or Scott or both?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. And, thank you for what you're doing. We want talent acquisition of medical professionals in the state as well. So thank you for joining us.
We want talent acquisition everywhere.
We just
don't
want
we?
acquisition.
Relocating workers.
Yes.
I just need to make a quick acknowledgement to Senator Brock. I was an intern in your department at Fidelity Investments back in the late 80s.
Oh my gosh, wow.
I know, I still remember meeting with you in your office. And so thank you for hiring me as an intern. And, fast forward 35 years later, here I am. So thank you.
Wonderful. So thank you.